Imagine this: a crackling fire, a warm blanket, and a good book. This is the picture of comfort, a feeling we all crave. It's a natural human instinct to seek safety and familiarity. We are hardwired to avoid danger and discomfort. This instinct has kept us alive for centuries. Comfort feels good. It reduces stress and anxiety. It allows us to relax and recharge. In a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable, comfort zones offer a sense of control and predictability. We know what to expect, and that can be incredibly soothing. But what happens when this desire for comfort begins to hold us back? When does the warmth of familiarity become a barrier to growth? This is the question we need to explore. The comfort zone is a psychological concept that describes a behavioral space where stress is minimal. It's where we feel safe and in control. Inside this zone, we operate on autopilot, relying on familiar routines and habits. This predictability is both a blessing and a curse. While it provides a sense of security, it also limits our exposure to new experiences and challenges. It's within these challenges that we discover our true potential. Stepping outside of our comfort zone, even if it feels uncomfortable at first, is essential for growth. It's where we learn new skills, build resilience, and expand our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. True growth happens when we dare to venture beyond the familiar. Our brains are not static. They are constantly changing and adapting in response to our experiences. This dynamic nature of our brain is what allows us to learn, grow, and evolve throughout our lives. From the moment we are born, our brains begin to form connections based on the stimuli we encounter. These connections are strengthened or weakened depending on how frequently they are used. This means that our daily activities, thoughts, and behaviors are continuously shaping the structure and function of our brains. This remarkable ability is called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. It allows the neurons in the brain to compensate for injury and disease, and to adjust their activities in response to new situations or changes in their environment. This adaptability is crucial for learning new skills, recovering from brain injuries, and adapting to new circumstances. Every time we step outside our comfort zone and engage in new activities, we create new neural pathways in our brains. These new pathways are like new roads being built in a city, allowing for more efficient and diverse routes for information to travel. Whether it's learning to play a musical instrument, picking up a new hobby, or exploring a new place, each new experience contributes to the growth and development of our brain's network. Think of it like this. Each new experience is like forging a new path through a forest. At first, the path is barely visible, and it takes effort to navigate through the dense underbrush. But with each step, the path becomes clearer and easier to follow. This analogy helps us understand how repeated practice and exposure to new experiences can solidify these new neural pathways, making them more efficient and automatic over time. The more we travel that path, the clearer and more defined it becomes. This is why practice and repetition are so important in learning new skills. The more we engage in a particular activity, the stronger and more efficient the neural connections associated with that activity become. This is the basis for the saying, "Practice makes perfect." Conversely, paths we seldom take become overgrown and difficult to navigate. When we stop engaging in certain activities or using certain skills, the neural pathways associated with those activities weaken and become less efficient. This is why it's important to keep challenging ourselves and trying new things, even if it's uncomfortable or difficult at first. This is why challenging ourselves is so important. When we push ourselves to try new things and step outside our comfort zones, we are essentially creating new paths in our brain. These new paths can lead to new opportunities, new skills, and new ways of thinking. It's through these challenges that we grow and develop as individuals. By repeatedly stepping outside our comfort zones, we strengthen our capacity for learning, adapting, and overcoming obstacles. Each new challenge we face and overcome adds to our resilience and adaptability. This not only helps us in our personal growth but also prepares us to handle future challenges more effectively. We become more resilient, more adaptable, and more open to new possibilities. This openness to new experiences and challenges is what drives innovation and creativity. It allows us to see the world from different perspectives and come up with new solutions to problems. By embracing change and uncertainty, we can unlock our full potential and achieve greater success in all areas of our lives. Growth is not a passive process. It requires active engagement with the world around us. It requires us to be curious, to take risks, and to embrace the unknown. By actively seeking out new experiences and challenges, we can continue to grow and evolve throughout our lives. So let's take that first step outside our comfort zone and start forging new paths in our brains. The journey may be challenging, but the rewards are well worth it. There is a crucial distinction between necessary rest and avoidance disguised as self-care. It's a fine line that many of us struggle to navigate, especially in a world that constantly demands our attention and energy. We often find ourselves caught in a cycle of busyness, where taking a break feels almost like a guilty pleasure rather than a necessity. But rest is not just a luxury. It's a fundamental part of maintaining our mental and physical health. We all need time to recharge and recover, but it's important to be honest with ourselves about when we are using comfort as a shield against discomfort. It's easy to convince ourselves that we're taking a well-deserved break when, in reality, we might be avoiding something that makes us uncomfortable. This avoidance can take many forms, from endlessly scrolling through social media to binge-watching TV shows, all under the guise of self-care. Are you choosing to stay in because you genuinely need to rest and recharge? Or are you avoiding a social situation that makes you anxious? It's a question worth pondering. Social anxiety is a real and challenging issue, but avoiding social interactions altogether can lead to isolation and even more anxiety in the long run. Sometimes pushing ourselves to step out of our comfort zones can be a form of self-care too. Are you putting off that challenging project because you're tired, or are you afraid of failing? Procrastination often masquerades as a need for rest. We tell ourselves that we'll tackle the task later when we're more ready, but that moment of readiness never seems to come. The fear of failure can be paralyzing, but facing it head-on is often the first step toward overcoming it. These are important questions to ask ourselves. Self-awareness is the key to distinguishing between genuine rest and avoidance. By regularly checking in with ourselves, we can better understand our motivations and make more informed choices about how we spend our time. While genuine rest is essential for our well-being, chronic avoidance can keep us stuck in a cycle of fear and inaction. This cycle can be incredibly draining both emotionally and physically. It can lead to feelings of guilt and self-doubt, making it even harder to break free and take action. It prevents us from pursuing our goals and living our lives to the fullest. When we allow avoidance to take over, we miss out on opportunities for growth and achievement. We become spectators in our own lives, watching from the sidelines as time passes us by. True self-care involves being honest with ourselves about our motivations and making choices that support our overall growth and well-being, even when those choices feel challenging. It means recognizing when we need to rest and when we need to push ourselves. It means finding a balance between comfort and challenge, between rest and action. By doing so, we can create a more fulfilling and balanced life, one where we are actively engaged and moving forward rather than stuck in a cycle of avoidance. Procrastination is perhaps the most insidious form of comfort seeking. It sneaks up on us, often disguised as a harmless break or a moment of relaxation. We tell ourselves that we deserve a little rest, that we'll get to the task later, but later often turns into much later, or even never. This habit of putting things off can become a cycle that's hard to break. We often convince ourselves that we are simply delaying a task until we feel more in the mood. But the truth is, procrastination is often rooted in fear. This fear can take many forms. Sometimes it's the fear of not being good enough, the fear that our efforts will fall short of expectations. Other times it's the fear of success and the changes it might bring to our lives, and then there's the fear of the unknown, the discomfort of stepping out of our comfort zones. We may be afraid of failure, afraid of success, or simply afraid of the discomfort that comes with tackling a challenging task. These fears can paralyze us, making the task seem even more daunting than it actually is. The more we avoid it, the bigger and scarier it becomes in our minds. This avoidance gives us a false sense of relief, but it's only temporary. So we choose the temporary comfort of avoidance over the long-term satisfaction of accomplishment. We might turn to distractions like watching TV, playing video games, or scrolling through social media. These activities provide an immediate sense of pleasure and escape, but they don't address the underlying issue. Instead, they add to our stress and guilt as the unfinished task looms over us. The problem is, procrastination rarely leads to a more relaxed or productive state. In fact, it often leads to increased stress, anxiety, and guilt. The longer we put off a task, the more it weighs on our minds. This mental burden can affect our mood, our sleep, and our overall well-being. We might find ourselves constantly thinking about the task, even when we're trying to relax. In fact, it often leads to increased stress, anxiety, and guilt. These feelings can create a vicious cycle where the more stressed and anxious we feel, the more we want to avoid the task, and the more we avoid it, the more stressed and anxious we become. This cycle can be hard to break, but it's not impossible. We end up feeling overwhelmed and defeated before we even begin. The task that we've been avoiding starts to feel like an insurmountable mountain. We might feel like we're drowning in a sea of unfinished work, with no way out. This sense of overwhelm can make it even harder to get started, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Breaking free from the procrastination trap requires recognizing it for what it is, a form of comfort-seeking that ultimately sabotages our goals and well-being. It's important to acknowledge the fears and discomforts that drive our procrastination, and to find healthier ways to cope with them. This might involve setting small, manageable goals, creating a structured schedule, or seeking support from others. By taking proactive steps, we can overcome procrastination and achieve the long-term satisfaction of accomplishment.